We have a nightmare interview of JD Vance with Kirsten Welker at Meet the Press, where he gives some just terrible answers. I know that's not new for him. And he is called out for playing the MAGA games, only further showing that he was not at all ready for the spotlight in this kind of way. So let's look over just a few of these.
Why is Donald Trump casting doubt on the election before it's even happened?
I don't think that's what Donald Trump is doing.
Well, that's what he's doing. That's what he says here. We need to make sure they don't cheat.
I think that what he's saying is that we want to pursue a set of policies in the Republican Party that make it easier for every legal ballot to be cast and counted, but make it harder for illegally cast ballots to be counted. Now, we can disagree about how many of those there are, whether there are a few hundred, a few thousand, maybe more, but just in the last week, okay, so just in the last week, once in Arizona and once in Pennsylvania, there were major court wins that make our ballot process more secure and more effective. I think that's what Donald Trump is talking about, is we have to pursue, sometimes through litigation, sometimes through better policy at the state or national level, a set of rules that make sure every ballot is legally counted.
Yeah, no, Trump is absolutely already trying to cast doubt, just like he did in 2020. So just like he did in 2020, if he loses, he can say it's rigged and fraudulent and everything's against him as a means to distract from his own attempts to do actual fraud and try to actually steal it. It's a pretty simple plan. Say, look over there, so you can buy yourself a little bit of extra time to try and get away with what you're doing before you get caught. Notice how the proof of election fraud that Trump always says is coming in a week or we'll do a press conference on it soon never happens because he doesn't have any, because none of it actually even happened. And now he's running the same playbook this year because MAGA will believe anything he says, which is why I'm done taking anyone serious who will vote for or support Trump, because they're just not serious people, not politically at least. And because first off, the only side who tried to cheat in 2020 is MAGA. Trump has been accused of this. It's in an indictment and he doesn't deny any of it. He just says, I need immunity for it.
You're calling it a sarcastic comment.
Sure.
And yet some women, and you got the feedback in real time, felt like it was a gut punch to them personally. Do you regret making that comment?
Look, I regret certainly that a lot of people took it the wrong way, and I certainly regret that the DNC and Kamala Harris lied about it.
But do you regret what you said, Senator?
Look, Kristen, I'm going to say things from time to time that people disagree with. I'm a real person. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to say things sarcastically, and I think that what's important is that we focus on the policy. There are certainly going to be things that I say, if I'm elected vice president, that people are going to say, well, I wish he had said that differently. I think it's most important to actually be the person I actually am, and to say those sarcastic comments were made in the service of a real substantive point. This country has become too anti-family. It's too expensive to afford a house. It's too expensive to afford groceries. Donald Trump and I want to change that, and unless we get better leadership, we're not gonna.
But again, just very quickly, given that people have told you directly, have spoken out, have said that they were offended, they were hurt by those comments, do you wish you never made those childless cat lady comments?
I think that it's much more important for me to just be a normal human being who sometimes says things that people disagree with. I have a lot of regrets, Kristen, but making a joke 3 years ago is not in the top 10 of the list.
Now, to be clear on this, it wasn't a joke. He said it over a dozen times in slightly different iterations every single time. It's something he firmly believes, but rather than backtrack, rather than apologize or anything like that, he's going to take a page out of Donald Trump's book and say, well, I was joking. You can't take me serious because Republicans are all a bunch of gutless cowards. But we all realize it by now for the most part, so it doesn't work nearly to the effect he hopes. Instead, we know the value that he sees in women now, what he thinks their duty is, and it's as subservient baby-making factories. Nobody wants that, and I can guarantee that women will vote against it this November.
Well, let's talk about Trump's record during his first term. He did impose rounds of tariffs, and it cost Americans nearly $80 billion in new taxes. Do you acknowledge that imposing more tariffs will ultimately cost consumers?
Well, what it really does is it penalizes importers from bringing goods outside the country into the country. And I think that's just a necessary thing. We know that China and a number of other countries are using effectively slave labor to undercut the wages of American workers. Donald Trump thinks that has to stop. And again, what Kamala Harris is saying, Kristen, is that if you do this, you're somehow going to cause skyrocketing inflation. In reality, Donald Trump already did it. He brought a lot of jobs back, and it didn't cause inflation.
But it caused consumers to pay more. They paid more in taxes, $80 billion worth. Do you acknowledge that consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed.
So economists...
Do you just acknowledge that?
No, I don't.
No, I don't believe when economists say that because Donald Trump disagrees and he is my Lord and Savior, so we all must believe him. It's nonsense. Trump did tariffs before and it cost the middle and working class $80 billion. He wants to massively put in place even more tariffs now that's going to cost the average family $4,000 a year. For the rich, that might not be a lot for Trump's people, but that's lifestyle changing money for many middle or lower class families. They'll have to cut out entire part of their lives just to afford to live under Donald Trump's tariffs plan. So why should any of them vote for that? Many of them won't. And what Trump will say is that they cheated.